Welcome everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, depending on where you are. I'd like to talk to you about something new that we have at the College of Surgeons, and specifically, I think that this is going to be really relevant and meaningful and helpful for hospitals that are participating in NSQIP. As you know, we are largely hugely proud of the NSQIP program. We've had it for over 15 years and have really advanced the program, advanced care, and it's largely because of all the hospitals that are participating in it and what you all do every single day to help collect great data and use it to get better. And over the past several years, we've identified some areas, a lot from your suggestions, from us kind of evaluating and looking and working with hospitals. And we've come upon developing a program called the Quality Verification Program. And it is a adjoining, adjunctive, aligned program that we really developed with NSQIP in mind. And so I'd like to spend the next, 20 or 30 minutes talking about the combined NSQIP ACS Quality Verification Program. I'm going to try to give you a big picture view and some details about it, and hopefully answer some of the questions you have. But again, as Susan said, if there are additional questions, please type them in or email them to us, and then we'll get to those questions in either FAQs or in a month we have another webinar which I can address additional questions that we didn't get to today in the presentation or the Q&A session. I also want to say that I invited Amy Drache, who is the senior manager overseeing this program and some others. And so she'll also help me answer some questions at the end of the technical pieces that our great staff help with all of our quality programs. So let me start off with this. There's a number of challenges across healthcare. A lot of them, most of them are within surgical care as well, in terms of achieving quality and safety, which is what we try to do basically every single day. There's a lot of variability in care and outcomes when we measure across populations, across our regions, across anywhere. That we see some great things and we see some not so great things, both in the care as well as in the outcomes. A lot of times we talk about limited resources, not enough staffing, not enough funding, not enough time, and so that is an issue. Diminishing margins, as we hear from our CFOs and all the accountants and all the payers, that there are diminishing margins, both financially but also in resources. There's inefficiencies where we think we can probably do it more efficient, faster, better in that way to increase value. And also there's a lot of unpredictability, and just us in this pandemic where it's going up and down and coming out with yet another variant, and it's not predictable of what's going to happen next week, next month, next year. But we still have to address all of these things. Excuse me, these are challenges, but these are also opportunities. As far as quality and in surgery, there are a number of things that come to mind, but four of the most common issues in achieving high quality care in surgery are these things. Overall, poor data, fragmented leadership and fragmented communication, culture not being prioritized to address quality, and insufficient processes for improvement. There's a number of other things that are potential issues in surgical quality, but these are four things that we hear time and time again, and in all types of hospitals, big, small, rural, urban, you name it. And so NSQIP was started, as you all know, 15 or so years ago, and in the college. And what it provides is data that is case mix and risk adjusted. It's data that has 30-day outcomes, not just when the patient leaves the hospital. It has the ability to drill down on data so that we can kind of get more and more detail and understand better what the issues are. It has procedure targeted options, so we can look at everything across the board, or we can target certain things like colectomy or cystectomy or a number of procedures across a number of specialties. And we also provide 300 different risk-adjusted models. So it's not just one way of looking at things, but we can look at it in multiple ways at multiple levels. And so this is what ACS NSQIP has done, and this is what largely, with working with all of our hospitals, we've been able to really progress in the program. But we also know that data alone are not enough, especially when there's insufficient data feedback because of a number of things that I mentioned earlier. Data are not effectively acted upon, or as effectively as possible acted upon. There are complicated issues that arise when teamwork and resources and leadership and communications are not optimally in place in order to solve the complicated issues. And then what we frequently see is that there are pockets of great quality work happening within some areas, some parts of the hospital or some specialties, but there's no real great mechanism to share it even within one single hospital. It might be going on great in the next ward or in the next set of offices or in the other different floor, but there's not a great way of understanding and sharing these best practices even within the same hospital. And unfortunately, we see this all too often. So to address these challenges and others, we developed the ACS Quality Verification Program, or what I'll refer to as the QVP Quality Verification Program. And in large part, this was done with ACS NSQIP hospitals specifically in mind. So to address the poor data, NSQIP gives us amongst the best data available in all of healthcare. Accurate, risk-adjusted, validated, feasible in giving the data back. But to address insufficient processes of improvement, to address fragmented leadership communication, to address quality culture not being prioritized high enough, NSQIP didn't really address those things, but we developed the ACS QVP Quality Verification Program to address these things. So by putting these two programs together and combining them, what we get is that hospitals get to meet the requests on how to better merge data and the quality improvement efforts. Combining these two programs assists hospitals in organizing the infrastructure for optimally using NSQIP to achieve surgical quality across all the service lines. It is not just one specialty or two specialties, but across all the surgical specialties. And really supports alignment of initiatives and efforts, of which I know most of you understand that in a hospital there are multiple initiatives and efforts. Sometimes they are fighting with each other for resources. But how best to align all those initiatives and efforts, how to align the effective leadership, and how to align communication that are all vital to optimizing surgical quality. It doesn't have to be one versus the other or some versus the others, but really how do we support all of them and do this on a framework and an understanding of resources and infrastructure to really optimally and effectively achieve quality improvement. So we developed the ACS QVP, and it was developed based on the ACS four-part model that we have used in our verification programs that have been very successful in different specialties. So the level 1, 2, 3 trauma centers uses this four-part model. The Commission on Cancer and its breast programs and the rectal program uses this four-part model. Our bariatric program uses this four-part model. Our children's surgery program uses this four-part model. And a number of the other verification accreditation programs at the American College of Surgeons uses this four-part model. So what is a four-part model? Four pieces are: number one, standards. Standards tell us and establish where we need to be, not where we are, not where we're told, from our experts, but really establish with a multidisciplinary, multi-stakeholder, evidence-based development where we need to be. These are the standards. They address a lot of things, but they address particularly the foundational infrastructure that needs to be in place. It identifies the infrastructure and the processes to support the standards. Of course, you need rigorous data to know how you're doing and if you're improving, whether you're improving or not. And the rigorous data comes from NSQIP. And then the fourth piece is verification. So a third party coming in to verify that the standards are in place, that the right infrastructure is supporting the standards, both in people, in time, and processes, and that the rigorous data are being used and the verification occurs. And in this case, the quality verification will achieve, hospitals can achieve a verified status for being an ACS quality hospital. So the next piece is that what makes up the QVP? What is it? It might sound really good, but what exactly is it? It's 12 standards. 12 standards, not hundreds, but just 12 that address resources, infrastructure, and a number of other things, so that we can target quality, safety, and value, which all our hospitals want to do. It's really developed to help all hospital types: teaching, non-teaching, rural, urban, community, government, safety net. Um, it's addressing all hospital types to measure themselves against these standards. It's applicable to all surgical specialties, so it's not general surgery, just general surgery. It's general surgery, vascular, orthopedics, neurosurgery, transplant, all the specialties, and addresses, importantly, all phases of care. It is just not an operative program or a operative and post-op program. It's defined in 5 phases: pre-op, immediate pre-op, the 24 hours before the operation takes place, where a lot of things happen, and that's what we call as the phase 2. Phase 3 is the intra-op. Phase 4 is post-op, and phase 5 is post-discharge. And so it really addresses the continuum of surgical care and the whole episode. I won't go into detail about the 12 standards themselves, or I won't spend much time on it, but it does span 5 important domains, and I do want to share with you what these domains are. So to achieve improvement, to achieve quality, we need leadership. We need leadership at a number of different levels, but hospital leadership, and they have to be committed to it. So hospital leadership, surgical leadership, leadership in quality, how do you align all those leaderships? So there are standards that address those. Surgical services leadership are 3 and 4, but specifically, not necessarily the department chair, but really who is overseeing the quality day in, day out, and who is the kind of the person who's going to lead those, drive those, understand those, and recommend what needs to be done. So a surgical quality officer and a committee that really focuses on that. The third bucket is patient care. That's really important to having standardized care across the 5 phases, and disease-based or programmatic management of care. The next bucket is data, and I think the NSQIP folks really understand that amongst the best in the country, if not the world. And then the last bucket is for improvement. The improvement efforts are in terms of identifying a problem and fixing it. So that can be done with NSQIP data, but it also can be done with reviews of cases, and fixes can be placed into credentialing, privileging, and so forth. This all recognizes that the improvement piece does a lot of things in addition to addressing regulatory performance metrics, which are important to many of our hospitals. I just want to say very quickly that there are 2 options for participating in QVP. A focused option, which looks at 2 specialties, and this is really thought of as a starter set, that if a hospital doesn't think that it could do everything all at once and wants to start off with a smaller step, there's the focused way of doing it with 2 surgical procedures, and then the next step would be the comprehensive and doing all the surgical specialties. And this is what I meant by looking at all the initiatives and efforts across a hospital, that if you're doing it in general surgery and orthopedics and not doing it in urology and neurosurgery, that's not ideal for the hospital or for what you're doing across surgical specialties. And so the comprehensive will look at everything. Getting there, some hospitals have chosen to do a focused step first, to kind of get their toe in the water, and then go on to comprehensive. In more detail, how does it work? And these circles will tell you that you can collect clinical data to identify where there are opportunities, use the reports to identify the outcomes that you really want to get better, assess the performance against standards, build an infrastructure to support the standards for the QVP, do external review to verify that the standards are met, implement quality improvement initiatives, and reassess performance. So this is very much of a framework that is similar to PDSA, to MAIC, and all of these other ways of just kind of identifying how to identify a problem and to achieve improvement. So what is the value for ACS NSQIP hospitals with ACS NSQIP and QVP? Well, it guides sites on how to employ the data and drive quality improvement, which is what we wanted to do from the very beginning anyway. And so it really helps us do that even better. This QVP is included with the ACS NSQIP annual subscription. If you're not in a NSQIP hospital, then you have to kind of go through a different route, and there's a fee associated with this. But we thought this was so important for NSQIP hospitals that this is included in the annual subscription. It's open to all NSQIP hospitals, regardless of location and type and size or anything. It includes a focus visit on 2 specialties to start the first step. and it's driven largely by the ACS SAR results, the semi-annual report. It provides sites with an after-visit summary report. So in a report, we address each of these 12 standards across the specialties, across the 2 specialties in a focus visit to say, how is the culture? How is the leadership? Where can the SQO work potentially better? What are opportunities? How are data evaluated? And what, if any, resources are needed to address this in a more effective way? And building on what we know in NSQIP is perhaps some of the best data available in healthcare, the QVP really is a necessary improvement part of the strategy. That once you get the data, once you identify the opportunities, then the improvement has to take place, and the QVP is going to help NSQIP hospitals in large part achieve that success. A number of folks have said, well, we don't need it, and we come back and actually hospitals have told us that we thought we knew these things, but we weren't confident. So I'm going to share these with you. QVP will help your NSQIP efforts if you are not confident. So let me ask it a different way. Are you confident that your leader of quality, whoever that person is aware of all the surgical complications? Are you confident that complications are evaluated consistently and resolved appropriately across not just one specialty, but all the specialties that perform surgery in your hospital? Are you confident that you can identify and distinguish between systems problems that might be hospital-wide and poor performance by individual providers or team of providers, or the misalignment amongst the team of providers? Are you confident that you have a process and sufficient resources for achieving improvement? And are you confident that the appropriate tools are to increase the value of surgical care you offer are in place? When we ask a number of amazingly great, well-known hospitals these questions, they, kind of think about it and say, well, I think we could do better, and if the QVP can help us, let's move forward with that. And that's what we've done with a number of pilot visits and visits in the first phase of the program, of the release of the program. And you might recognize some of these hospitals. And we have done visits in large hospitals, small hospitals, hospitals across the country in all these different regions and different profit status and different, the patient populations. And really, everyone is helped by this. And we've had, some really great feedback from the hospitals to say that, it's really good to have somebody else come in and let us know, based on evidence-based and expert standards, how we're doing and how we compare and what our opportunities are, because sometimes we can't see them once we're kind of on the in the inside. So, how does my hospital get verified, or how can we think about getting verified? First step is to review the standards and the online resources. I'll show you the website in a second. Select a participation option. If you're not sure, going the focus route with a couple of specialties is what I would recommend to kind of start things off and take a step first and then kind of go from there. Submit an online application, which is a simple thing to do. Complete the PRQ, which is the pre-review questionnaire. This is kind of getting a lot of the information that is ongoing at your hospital. And I will say this, all the sites that have filled out the PRQ learn so much by filling out, just answering these questions that we ask about. And so that is a learning experience and a helpful experience in that way. So step 4 is completing the PRQ. And then step 5 is the virtual site visit. We were doing in-person site visits because of the pandemic and whatnot, we've been able to transition them to a virtual site visit over Zoom or another a vendor, and they've been really actually successful. And we, even after the pandemic, we might continue with these virtual site visits. It's still be determined, but for now, they're going to be virtual site visits. So I'm going to end here, but really, this is really a short presentation about the program that you're doing, NSQIP, collecting amongst the best data and accurate and valid data, and then now aligning it with the QVP, which is the program that is going to really support the optimal use of the data that is being collected. If you want to learn more, go to www.facs.org/ all these words. You can find it easily just going to the FACS and looking under the quality programs. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to ask Susan to kind of take over, because I'm not sure what to do with this site, and I'll probably push wrong button. But great to see you all, and I'm happy to answer any questions along with Amy.
Great. Excuse me. All right. Thank you, Dr. Ko, for that presentation. We will now go to our Q&A segment. Amy Geraci will now join Dr. Ko to answer the questions that have come through. Amy is our Senior Manager for Accreditation and Verification Program Development. So welcome, Amy.
Thanks, Susan.
We hope to get to as many questions as possible. However, if time does not allow, I mentioned earlier, we will respond to you via email. And you can also contact us at ACS NSQIP at FACS.org. Okay, so let's go to the questions. To begin with, we have 4 initial questions that have been sent to us quite frequently since the program was announced. And again, similar questions have actually shown up during the webinar. So I thought that we should go to those questions first, which I have correlated into 4 questions for you to start with. So the first one is, how do I describe QVP to the rest of my team?
Let me take a stab at this, and then Amy, I know you've worked with all the hospitals, and so you might have a better answer than what I offer. But QVP is a program that addresses the infrastructure and resources needed to optimally conduct improvement. And for NSQIP hospitals, you could say that this is the kind of the adjunctive program that's going to help NSQIP work even better than it does now. Let me hand it off to Amy to see what you can add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I would just kind of second that. Obviously, data is one piece of this puzzle of doing quality improvement, and having worked with our many other verification programs at the college, they really see the value of having an external body set standards and then help hospitals walk through those standards through the preparation of a site visit, and also having the site visit itself and giving feedback after the site visit, and then kind of having a focus and an eye on continuously improving and meeting those standards over time with renewal and follow-up visits. So I think that structure really adds a lot and really helps the hospital kind of take a step back and give focus to some of these things that, although they may be trying to do every day, they may not have the time or the resources to really give it that focus every so often.
Great, thank you for that. Next question is, who would implement the program at the site? And in answering that question, Amy and Dr. Ko, would you please also address who would be involved when hospitals prepare for NSQIP QVP?
Amy, why don't you go ahead, because I know you work with a lot of the hospitals in the operational side, and then if anything else, I'll add to it at the end.
Sure. So, to get us started, we're really looking to work with, a surgeon leader who may or may not already fulfill the role of what we're calling the surgical quality officer, but it's anyone who's a surgeon who currently has some responsibility over quality. And so, just starting there with kind of walking them through the standards, as well as, an administrative point person who's going to kind of help collect the information and pull the pieces together within the PRQ. And from there, I would say, if it's a focus visit that you're preparing for and you're going to have 2 specialties that we're going to, work with you through looking at the SAR and other pieces to decide what those are. From there, it's really engaging the leaders of those specialties as well. Obviously, you're going to need to have buy-in from your hospital administration as well. So, we're more than willing to help you in terms of how you can kind of approach them and message with them the value of this and why it's a good idea. But you're going to need all of those key players in place to really be successful and feel prepared for your visit. And that's regardless of where you're at. I mean, in terms of the development of all of these things, I just want to iterate and take this moment to kind of stress that we don't expect that everyone's going to have everything in place for a focused visit. The idea is really to get you started and help you get some feedback early on so that you can continue to develop these things out.
Yeah, maybe the one thing I'll add is that of our hospitals that have participated so far, what's been really interesting, and I guess maybe not surprising, but actually really cool, is that leaders of and people who are really believing in and trying to do quality are meeting because of these of applying for and going through the QVP verification visit. So, people are saying like, wow, I didn't know that that was happening in our hospital. Like, oh, I would like to work with you, and so forth. And so when you think about achieving quality across a hospital and across the specialties and all the different procedures and all the different folks who are doing surgical operations in a hospital, it's a broad landscape. And to achieve surgical quality, that landscape needs to be kind of on the same page, kind of rowing in the same direction. And in that sense, who implements it, it's gonna take the village. Now, there should be leaders of the village, and so sometimes it's been the NSQIP people, the surgeon champion or the SCR or both. Sometimes it's been something already in place that's in the hospital that is not the surgeon champion, but it's figuring out within each of the sites who that person is, who the leaders are, who are the team around it, who's the village, and how to kind of get everyone both in lockstep, but also communicating and understanding and sharing and basically achieving improvement. So this is a great question, Susan. I'm glad people are asking it, but it really takes a whole bunch of folks, but some leadership and some vision, and hopefully based on the kind of the framework that QVP puts in place, it'll help support that movement and progress forward.
Great. I think you answered the next question, which was what are the roles of the surgeon champion SCR during the implementation? I think you just answered that. But just a second point to that question that somebody asked was, what are their roles, the surgeon champion SCR during the site visit?
Yeah, Amy, do you want to talk about what they've done, and then I can again add anything if need be?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think the answer to that somewhat depends on what their role is at the hospital outside of being the surgeon champion or the SCR. So if you're someone who, say you're in the surgeon champion role and you're already sort of leading quality initiatives, within surgery and perhaps across specialties, then I think, you're probably somewhat already in that SQO role, and so you're definitely going to be heavily involved in that. Similarly, if you're an SCR that's maybe also a quality director, and you're also engaged with quality improvement aspects of things, certainly there's definitely a large role for you in terms of helping prepare for the visit, and just kind of making sure you're sharing with us what you're already doing. And then, during the site visit as well, even if you're not in sort of a leadership role, there are portions of the site visit where we will spend a lot of time focusing on how do you use data and NSQIP data, some of it, but also your other data that you may have from other sources, and those that are collecting the data to really assess, is that data being used and collated with other data sources so that it can be used in a meaningful way. How is that working in tandem with your quality improvement folks at the hospital? So there's definitely a focus on that during the visit.
So maybe
Perfect.
the only thing I would add is that regardless of what role somebody has within NSQIP, and let's just start with the NSQIP program, whether it's a surgeon champion or the SCR, there's a lot of variability that we see across the board. Some SCRs primarily are collecting data and focusing on that, and that's all they are asked to do, and that's their role. Other SCRs have kind of, in addition to collecting data or combined in a way collecting the data, they are doing something in improvement, and so they're leading efforts. They're really working with the team to kind of achieve improvement and so forth. And I'm not saying that one is better than the other or worse than the other, but there's a lot of variability. What we have heard from a lot of folks, whether it's the SCR or the surgeon champion, is that they would like to be at least more knowledgeable about improvement and really how to be more effective. Because if we're going to spend time doing it, it'd be really great if we can spend time effectively rather than kind of going in circles or not being as efficient as possible. To answer that question or that issue or that request, we've developed a quality improvement course that was just released last month. And a number of folks, including Lillian Cow, helped to develop this course. And it is a course about quality improvement. Now, if you're an SCR or surgeon champion or involved with NSQIP or just in the hospital and wanting to understand quality better, I think that this is a great course. It is called Quality Improvement, the Basics, and it's not this kind of theoretical text, read chapters and chapters. It was really made for the frontline clinicians, practitioners, or improvement specialists, whether it's on the data side or the improvement side or both, to know kind of giving the basics of that. So whether you're, and getting back to the SCR, regardless of what you're doing day to day for NSQIP as the SCR role, knowing what goes on before the the data gets to you, what you're doing with the data, and what happens with the data after, is going to be really helpful, because I think that that knowledge is going to improve the efforts overall across the continuum. And so I would encourage people to kind of look into that course as well. And it was really developed for like people who are like involved in NSQIP or involved in any of our programs, but really to understand the basics of improvement, because we hear about it and we kind of use the words, but do we really understand it enough that we can really contribute to it optimally and effectively and efficiently? So I'd encourage people to look at the ACS Quality Improvement, the Basics course, and participate in that, and it'll make what you're doing probably even better than you're doing it already.
Perfect. We have quite a few questions that have come in that are really, really good. The last one of the four that I wanted to ask you that has come in is that a few sites have actually asked for this. Do sites need to have the SQO and the Surgical Quality and Safety Committee in place? But overall, I think the sense I'm getting from the hospitals that are participating or the attendees is that how much do they need to have in place prior to the site visit in terms of standards? What do they need to have in place before you all come to see them at the hospital?
Yeah, so I think it really ultimately depends on how you want to use this focus visit to benefit your hospital. I mean, some hospitals that we went to as part of the pilot, they really hadn't done much development in this way. It was more aspirational thinking that this was the kind of work that they wanted to do, and they used the site visit to really kickstart that effort and really bring people around the table to kind of hear why this is important, why it should be prioritized, and then from there kind of got organized. And then there are other hospitals that maybe really have developed things out in a few areas, but they just haven't gotten a chance to really spread it across all specialties. And so in that case, you're really looking for that verified status up front. But either way, I think all hospitals, felt like even if they were somewhat developed, you probably saw from that slide that Cliff put up with all the hospitals that participated in the pilot visit, there are some very, established hospitals on that slide. And so even those that really felt like they had a lot working and going for them, it was really an opportunity to kind of step back and say, how are we aligning all of these efforts? Are they working together? Are we doing this in an efficient way? If we have an ERAS program in one specialty, is there another program with an entirely different effort reinventing the wheel in another area? So, I think it kind of just depends on how you want to get this started in your hospital. I will say, if you've participated in a trauma visit or a bariatric visit, this focused option is not like that in terms of the expectation that, you're going to meet to the letter of the law every standard before we come to do a site visit. And also, I think just thinking of it more as us trying to help you through this and establishing it than thinking of it more as the end of the line, and you've already gotten there.
Maybe the thing to add, to reiterate that Amy did say, is that this is not the test, the final exam. This is constantly just as we know from improvement, it's iterative, and we just keep on going and going, and it's working on it every single day. And in terms of kind of the operational kind of aspects of doing the site visit, that we've been to plenty of site visits where and the question was specifically about an SQO. The SQO is not named. However, the job description of like, well, what is the role of the SQO in our setting and how will they work, was thought about and was kind of pen to paper or typed into the application of what is the role and what we would specify and what would work well here. But they didn't name somebody just yet. And a lot of times it was fine because we met a whole bunch of people, and a lot of people met each other, and kind of they worked through and they figured out, and they were figuring out how to make the SQO role work, and kind of who would be a good person for that, or of a number of people. And so they didn't kind of figure it out definitively just yet, but they were along the way figuring that out, and that's totally fine. Not everything has to be 100% set in this, because we recognize that there's a lot of moving parts, and it's not always so easy to get everything done then. So this is really a kind of along a continuum. And so if it's not named exactly yet, but there's been thought about it and figuring out what would work in your setting, then that is totally fine.
Great, thank you. Another question is, if a site wanted a focused NSQIP review, could we include a non-NSQIP track specialty as one of the 2 specialties?
The beginning part of the process, so once you kind of raise your hand to participate, there's a facility profile that the hospital is going to be asked to fill out, and we're going to get some high-level information about the specialties that you offer, and really try, based on the information that you provide in there, try to guide you toward the specialties that we think will have the largest impact for you. And this will obviously be a dialogue between us and you. We're going to look at some information and make a recommendation as to what we think would be most impactful. But I think what Cliff, mentioned many times during his presentation is that, the specialties that do utilize NSQIP data, they're the ones that tend to be, able to really act on the other pieces of QVP. And so, we are going to be looking at those as well as your SAR to kind of see, are those good opportunities for us to start with?
And I will add that in our visits so far, at least you're doing focused, and there's 2 specialties. One of them should at least use NSQIP data, because it's really to help use the NSQIP data even better than it's being used now. So how is it collected? How is it fed back? How is it adjudicated? How is it used to affect improvement? How does it know that at the end of the day that you've improved? So one of the specialties using NSQIP is essential. The other one can also be using NSQIP, the other specialty, but the other specialty can be using some other data set or no data, and figuring out what they're doing if they don't have a registry, but if they just are doing, M&Ms and case reviews and things like that. And how do you achieve improvement in a specialty that might not have a registry or has a different registry? There's a number of registries out there. And so one of them should be a NSQIP specialty, and the other one can be, but it doesn't have to be. And it might be good to kind of have a mix of 2 different types to kind of understand what are the principles across improvement based on, the problems found and the opportunities found.
Great, perfect. The next question is, can a specialized surgical center apply for QVP, and also can international hospitals participate?
Any hospital that provides surgical services, is going to be able to benefit from this. In terms of an international site, certainly we would see value in doing this program there. There are some obvious considerations we need to have in place, just to make sure that we can conduct the visit. And there's a chart review portion of the visit, so having some documentation in English and all that. We're not set up to do foreign language visits yet, but I would say that any hospital that offers surgical services, like Cliff said in his slide presentation, was designed to work in a variety of hospital settings.
Great.
Yeah, and this is especially where the virtual visits have really helped us, instead of flying all over the place and really being limited by that and kind of the time it takes to travel and whatnot. The being able to do it virtually has really opened up to more global efforts of doing improvement. And so yes, if you're an international hospital in NSQIP, then absolutely. I think that as Amy said, there are always some security issues that we want to make sure are tip top and all those types of things. But as long as those are set, then yes, anybody.
Great. All right, the next question is there a time frame a hospital would have to wait if they decide to achieve the focus verification first and then want to go comprehensive? Like, would they have to wait a year before going to comprehensive? How long would it take before going to comprehensive after achieving focused?
So I wouldn't say that there is a set timeline around this, although I think it's really just dependent on how quickly your hospital is able to kind of prepare for each visit, then respond to the feedback, build things out, and then move on to the comprehensive level. So I think, if you're having a question about, what should we expect? Do we fit more of a comprehensive versus a focused? I think reaching out directly to us to kind of talk that through and talk through your hospital's individual circumstances is probably the best. But there's no set sort of waiting period. I would say it would be pretty ambitious to try to do 2 site visits within a year. So I think it's probably natural to expect that there would at least be a year between them.
Okay.
I think that there's, maybe that from the report that you would get back after a focus visit, there will be a number of things that you do well, number of opportunities that you can do to kind of get better, and kind of very specific recommendations that, like, if you really want to get better, here's a prioritized list of things that you can do. And sometimes the list is very easy, and sometimes the list will take a little longer. And so I think it'll be individualized based on what is said of, and places are picking, two specialties and focus that they're proud of, and like we think we're doing well. Let's see how we measure up. That would be terrific. But if that hospital has 8 other specialties that are not doing as much or as well, or have to kind of figure some things out, it might take a little longer than it did to kind of prepare the first 2 specialties. And so a lot of it is going to be individualized to the sites. As Amy said, the staff is experienced in working with hospitals of all sorts and all kind of levels in the quality spectrum. And so the best thing is really to kind of talk to us, and then we can kind of assess together, what would be a good time frame. And as Amy said previously, and I do want to reiterate this, is that this is a kind of a progression, and similar to other programs in terms of progression, that it'll however many years it's going to take to kind of get to a level that you are really kind of seeing that this is the top of the hill. It might be different for different hospitals, but it's not waiting until the hospital thinks it's at the top of the hill to get a visit. This is really going to help identify where you're doing well and where you have opportunities, and where we can help you to kind of achieve those opportunities effectively and efficiently, rather than kind of having to reinvent the wheel without getting some help and insights and what we learn from visiting other hospitals. And as we visit other hospitals and learn these things, we are obviously going to put these out and share them, of how people have kind of found solutions to work in a lot of times difficult settings of healthcare.
Great. I just want to say something, Dr. Ko. A lot of people are asking about the quality course and where to find it. I just want to reiterate that you will find it on the ACS NSQIP website. If you go to FACS.org and go to quality programs, that's where you'll find the quality course. It'll be on the first page of the NSQIP page on our website.
And I do want to mention this, because I'm sorry, Susan, because we just had a meeting about the 2022 Quality Safety Conference. I know we just finished our last one. It's still 6 months away, but it's going to be in July, and it's going to be a conference that we're going to try to hold in person in Chicago. And we are going to hold, if people want to do it in person, we're going to hold a version of the course in person at the conference. So there is a do-it-yourself kind of self-paced course that you can do online, which I think is great. And that's how we really designed the course. But some people are like, well, I really like doing it in person. And as long as it's safe to do, we are working to also offer it in person. Or you could do both. I mean, you can never have enough quality improvement basics. So, but I just want to say that, we've decided to kind of offer that at the upcoming Quality Safety Conference in July.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Next question is, how do sites go about selecting the surgical specialties for focused?
So yeah, I think we might have touched on that earlier, but essentially when you raise your hand to kind of start the process of preparing for a QVP visit, the first step is going to be asking you to provide some information to us on the different specialties offered at your hospital. We're going to be looking at some volume information to kind of see like what percentage of your patients are, being treated in different areas. and also try to get a sense of, if you already participate in some of the verification programs that are specialty specific, that would factor in as well, because perhaps you've already kind of done a deep dive in those areas and we don't need to go back and rehash that. So there's a lot of considerations there, and actually Susan is really going to be working closely with these hospitals to kind of come to that final decision. And so, I would say look at where you think this program could have the most impact. So not just only where you think, oh, we would check all the boxes, but also, what specialty could really benefit from doing this sort of self-assessment, and getting some feedback and affirmation of, kind of the direction that they're headed in to try to really put these quality processes in place.
Great. And we only have a few more minutes left, but there's still a couple more questions. Next one is, my hospital is new to NSQIP. We joined 8 months ago. How much data do we need to have before applying for verification?
That's a Cliff question.
Oh, I was like, I want to hear what Amy is going to say about this one. No, totally fine. Wherever you are in the journey and whenever you started, I think it'd be fine to do it. And it might be good also kind of starting off with this, just like, well, how do you plan to use the NSQIP data? How are you gonna, once you find a problem, how are you gonna define a problem? How are you gonna and what are the next steps with the problem? How are you gonna escalate it if it needs to go to the hospital level or to a cross specialty? So it'll bring up a lot of points of how to really optimally use the NSQIP data. So even if somebody's just starting the program, it might be a really good thing to do as you're as you're starting.
Great. And does the ACS have a business plan to share with sites with a timeline and necessary resources to present to hospital management?
Go ahead, Amy.
So we are looking, we already have some resources available on our website that can be shared with, anyone who's, taking this to their leadership and wanting to really show the value of it. There's also this webinar that's going to be recorded that anyone can go back to and kind of share, if you don't want to try to reiterate what we've said here today, certainly we would welcome you to share this conversation. There's also additional webinars happening in January and other videos and all kinds of resources available on our website. If you need us to really kind of help you craft your messaging and presentation, or if you want us to even participate in some of those conversations, please reach out and we can see if we can arrange that.
Great. For the last few minutes, we have quite a few attendees that asked about cost and when it comes to NSQIP, if we could just go over the fact that it's included in NSQIP and also the application, where they can find the application.
Susan, was the prior question about resources about doing the program or resources of improvement in the hospital? What did Amy answer? Sorry?
Resources for the program so they could sell it to, I guess, the C-suite at the hospital.
Okay, all right, yes. So I think Amy said it, comprehensively.
Yeah. And the next question is, I guess people are a little bit confused. Is it included in NSQIP? And does NSQIP now require you to be participating in QVP?
So it is included in NSQIP, and it's the focused version, kind of starting off, that is. And if they want to do comprehensive, it's less than if you weren't in NSQIP. And so I will say this, that I think after over a decade of watching NSQIP hospitals do what they do, doing QVP will help these hospitals do what they do better. And I don't want to say hugely better, but so far we've seen that it'll help them do things hugely better. And so I think that is the best way to kind of talk about the QVP's role for NSQIP hospitals.
Okay. The next question is, will my hospital be verified after completing a site visit? similar to the other verification accreditation programs at the ACS?
Yeah, so, essentially we are going to be, going through the structure of the 12 standards, looking at some things at the hospital level, but also unique things within each of the specialties. And, if we find that you are meeting the standards, then at that point, we would issue you a verified status. And so, not only is participating QVP doing the right thing to really improve quality, but it also allows your hospital to really let the patient population know that you have committed resources to doing this, and that you are very committed to high quality care. So yes, the verified status is a product of participating in the QVP.
Okay. How does this work for a hospital system? I know we don't have a lot of information online about the system, but can you talk about how this would work for a hospital system with multiple campus participation?
So we have tried, we have piloted this in a few hospital systems, and I will say that, doing it in one hospital is probably, a good place to start. If you're looking at developing infrastructure at the system level, and just kind of how to kick that off, we are looking at offering a potential consultative option for systems at this point in time. But really, the program as it is designed and launched today is really for individual hospital participation.
Great.
Yeah, Susan, so if there are folks listening who would like to inquire about it, then yes, inquire, because we do have experience in doing it, and in the kind of spirit of crawling, walking, and then running, kind of starting off with bite-sized steps that are achievable and feasible and optimally helpful is probably the best way to go. But if hospitals think that they would like to really delve in and do the system and kind of just jump in head first and go into it, then call us, and then we can discuss it and share with you our experience in doing some different types of systems that we've done already. There are definitely benefits, but it's not as kind of one-sided, all benefits, no kind of downside as one might think. So we're happy to share it, and if it's right, then we will proceed with that. But it's great to have a conversation about it.
Great. And with that, we're all out of time. So we've reached the end of our questions. Thank you to Dr. Ko and Amy and all the attendees for taking the time to attend our webinar. If you have any other questions or want to set up a conference call with the NSQIP QVP team, please reach out to us at acsnsqip@facs.org. We're more than happy to have a call with you and the rest of your stakeholders at your hospitals to help you get through the process. Again, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. We look forward to hearing from you soon. Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.